We're going to try to do this where you guys can see my screen a little bit. Hopefully take a little bit of the focus off of my ugly mug, but I'm Ryan McMahon, and we're going to talk about fishing pressured waters here in Minnesota. And I think if anybody knows me, they know I spend a lot of time fishing the Twin Cities and around the state of Minnesota, and I think we can all agree that it's not just the Twin Cities and the metro waters that are getting pressured heavily now for muskies. So let's take a look here. We'll kind of go through a few things. Hopefully you guys are getting settled in on the program here. But so I just want to talk first about what is fishing pressure, right? You know, and how do you quantify it? I guess it's kind of tough to really, you know, say one lake is more pressured than the other. It's kind of a eye of the beholder type of situation. But, you know, I always look at, you know, how many boats am I going to see in a day fishing muskies, and how many acres are on that, you know, in the lake, how many boats per acre, right? And how many muskies per acre is always a important statistic. How many boats per acre is another one. So, you know, how does the lake lay out too? There's some lakes I'll fish, and I'll see, you know, 10 boats at the access that are fishing muskies, and I don't see them at all out on the water. And then there's other lakes where, you know, you go out there and you're tripping over the same guys, you know, the same 3 boats all day long. So, you know, that has to do with what bite you're fishing. Okay, so, you know, does the lake lend itself to like a shoreline bite? Is it main lake spots? Open water? And then, you know, live bait. So I kind of have the notes here. I'm trying to find these notes here and crane my neck. You guys can see them better than I can. So one thing I was going to talk about is a lottery bite, right? So you have these situations. It might be open water, Head of Lakes Bay on Vermilion. It might be Isle Bay on Mille Lacs in June. But you have some situations where there's really no rhyme or reason to where these fish are. We're not fighting over, you know, a certain piece of real estate necessarily. We're fishing areas. And basically, I mean, everybody's got a different skill level, but based on positioning alone, each boat kind of has the same odds as far as contacting fish. So that's what I call a lottery bite, okay? So some guys can deal with that better than others. I personally don't care for that too much. I like to be fishing spots. I like to be precise with my boat. So we'll talk a little bit about that kind of thing. Recreational pressure, you know, that always comes into play when you're talking about metro lakes. You've got lots of fishing pressure up north, maybe less recreational pressure. You get in the metro lakes in the warmer months, and boy, it's really tough to tell. You know, I mean, there's hundreds of boats out on the lake sometimes. It's tough to tell who's fishing, who's not. But that's definitely going to factor in. It's definitely going to make it a more stressful day when you got jet skis and wakeboarding boats and all that good stuff out there. So, are there any unpressured lakes left in Minnesota? It's a really good question. I think, you know, there's not too many unturned leaves out there anymore. You get some sleeper lakes where fish have, you know, lakes that aren't managed for muskies, where the muskies may be bled in there through streams or whatnot. But even those lakes, it seems like if I'm ever sneaking out to some of those bodies of water, I'm seeing other guys. You know, so it's tough. You know, and you've got bigger lakes like Mille Lacs, Vermilion, and you've kind of got the 10-90 or 90-10 ratio or saying that you hear about. And that is, you know, 90% of the fish use 10% of the water. So even when you're on these bigger lakes, a lot of times, you know, guys are dialed into the pattern or the bite at that given time of year. And so you're fighting over the same small percentage of water out there. So, you know, I think all this fishing pressure that we're seeing in Minnesota, you know, it's because of a lot of different things. Last year, nobody was working. All you guys were slacking off and were on the lakes, you know, Monday through Friday rather than just the weekends, which is fine. That's great for everybody. But we got a lot of guys on the waters, and we just don't have that many musky lakes these days, right? You know, if you look at the percentage of lakes we have in Minnesota, it'd be nice to get a few more. So, also the age of information, you know, the internet, everybody just seems to be able to cut the learning curve a little bit faster, and everybody seems to be fishing the same stuff, the right patterns, and really staying on these fish from opener to the end of the year. That's a big thing, is staying on these fish throughout the seasonal progression. So I want to talk a little bit just about kind of my thought process, when I'm fishing. I try to block everything out, try to block out the recreational pressure as best I can, block out the fishing pressure, and I want to talk really just about like my mental thought process and just going through everything on a daily basis, fishing here in the metro and guiding people. I try to treat every day like a tournament, right? I mean, your thought process should be sound. You should have an idea of where you're going to fish, breaking down spots. So have a plan. When I hit the water, I've got my first 3 spots picked out every time I hit the water. All right. I'm ready to deviate from that plan at any moment, though. Okay, so you're going to have people that might be fishing those spots. You're going to have recreational traffic. You're going to have weather. All those things that can change your plan on a dime. So be ready to switch. And one thing that I think is a benefit of being out on the water every day is, I try to look at different spots in different areas, because they're not always spots. If you're fishing open water, it might be areas, basins, whatever. And I try to get an idea of how many fish are available on that spot or in that area. And I kind of, basically, like, it's sort of like maybe a weekly cycle or a weatherly cycle. So if you have stable weather for a while, typically those fish are going to hang out in the same area, and then when the weather resets, then it kind of scatters the fish, and then you're going to have different fish moving up. So if I'm fishing an area, say a big main lake, sunken island, or big piece of real estate, a point or something like that, and we're getting follows and we're moving, several different fish. Say you're getting the feeling there's maybe 4 or 5 fish on the spot. I'm trying to keep tabs on whether other people are catching those fish, whether other people are stinging those fish, how many boats are fishing that spot. Have we caught those fish? Have we stung those fish? Okay, because you can spend a lot of time fishing spots where there were fish available, and then you're fishing after those fish have been moved off the spot or caught or whatever. So I would say, like, if you see 1 fish on a spot, it might be a lone wolf. If you see 2, there's likely a wolf pack. Okay, so 2 usually means more. 1 could just be a lone fish, but always be looking for those spots that hold multiple fish. So with all that said, too, every day I'm trying to mix in new water, trying to fish new spots, trying to fish new areas. Some of these smaller metro lakes, maybe there's spots that, they're not new to me. I've fished them, but maybe I haven't fished them for a year. Maybe I haven't fished them for 2 years, 3 years. So I'm always trying to mix in new stuff. Don't get stuck in your rut every day of just fishing your milk run. If it's a new spot that I've never fished, a lot of times I'll drive that spot before I fish it. I might drive it knowing I'm going to fish it hours later, or maybe the next day or later in the week. But I like to drive that, take a look at it with my electronics, hop up in the boat and look with my own eyes, drive right over the thing. That's one thing on these pressured lakes, especially metro lakes. When fish are up on top of spots, I don't think that they're that boat shy. They're just boats traveling over them. Obviously, they're getting a lot of boat traffic, pontoons, wakeboarding boats, all kinds of different vessels are traveling over these things. So, and then of course, so when you're catching fish, when they're on, when they're biting, move quickly, be efficient. All right. I've talked a lot about fish handling and just being a well-oiled machine when this is happening, because these windows, when they open up, they're short, they're quick, they're sweet. You want to take advantage. You might fish a lot of hours to get to one of these windows being open. You don't want to be messing around and putzing with equipment and fish and all that stuff. So here we go. So the moon and timing. So you guys have heard a lot about the moon, I'm sure. If you've read anything about musky fishing, watched seminars, been to seminars, that type of thing, everybody talks about the moon, so this is my obligatory moon slide. But really, it's timing for me. I mean, every day I'm going through a series of, basically trying to find fish, finding where I want to be when the weather changes, or if it's stable weather, when the moon's doing something. So if that moon's at the horizon, if it's overhead, underfoot, I want to be moving to a spot 30 to 40 minutes before that, and I want to be working to the spot on the spot right when that moon is at the horizon. And people will ask about moon phases, right? They'll say, well, do you believe in moon phases? Okay, so a moon phase to me, and I think most other people, is full moon, new moon, quarter moon, that type of thing. So full moon, new moon, love them, right? A lot of times pre-new moon, pre-full moon, a couple days leading up to them is definitely when I want to be in the water. You start to sometimes see that bite wane a little bit in the days after full moon or new moon. Part of that might be that you have more fishing pressure and those fish are getting picked off and being stung, caught, whatever, etc. Before leading up to those days. So if you're planning a trip, that's the stuff you want to look at. Okay, if you're just going out fishing when you can, you want to be looking at the daily moon events. Okay, that's moon rise, moon set. So when I say when the moon's at the horizon, that's rising and setting. Same thing. I want to put my stock into the 20 minutes or so before that event happens. Overhead, underfoot, same thing. People will ask, well, which one's better? A lot of times it's whatever's happening. If it's a morning bite, whatever the moon's doing in the morning, that's what's going to be best. I'm not Tom Gelb. I have not documented all my data and gone total scientific on this situation, so I don't have stats on moonrise or moonset, whatever. I'm fishing every day. I'm fishing hard through these moon stretches, and I'm building my day to be at the right spot at the right time when the moon's doing something. So on pressured waters, and this is a tricky one, so I don't want to prematurely move a fish off a spot, okay? So if I know there's a big fish sitting on a point, sitting on a good ambush spot, it's poised, ready to eat, I don't want to go there, say, midday with no moon. I don't want to move that fish if it's going to follow 10 feet behind my bait and, see the boat and then kind of lazily swim up. I don't want to educate that fish. But here's where the combat fishing and the pressured stuff comes into play, because you have to be aware of who else is fishing the area, who else is fishing the lake. We've got a lot of good sticks that are fishing around the Twin Cities, and a lot of times it's a little bit of sometimes you almost have to guard a spot, and so you might want to, kind of fish around that area and maybe not, get there an hour and a half before you actually want to hit the spot on the spot. I'll tell you what, it's really frustrating when somebody does that to you. And there's a term that I'm not going to say that you guys may be able to guess that gets used for that, but it is an efficient tactic. So, you'll have to gauge your risk reward as far as other boats and kind of how much time you want to spend protecting a spot or whatever. But I will fish areas quite a bit where I'm actually not touching the spot on the spot until I feel the time is right. That's usually the moon or a weather change. So. Yeah, break line fish in June. So just if you're moving these fish at the wrong time, so like in June, a lot of times what you'll see, these break line fish are just off the break. They'll follow a bait. They'll be real far behind it, and they'll just keep going. They'll come in stiff as a board. They'll be 20 feet behind the boat, and they'll just it's like they're not even alive, and they'll just float, and they'll just go right out to sea. And I swear, sometimes these fish, you move them out of the weeds or off the break line, and it's like they come out and they get out in the open water and they see all the bluegills and all the panfish and everything that's out there, and they just say, all right, I'm done. I'm done with weeds. I'm out of here. So definitely want to time that right. Sucker fish, if I'm dragging suckers, and a lot of times you'll pull a fish. I've pulled fish literally miles down break lines where they'll it's like a snake charmer. They get behind that sucker, and that sucker just swims in a straight line, and the fish just does the same thing. I've actually done it where I get so sick of the fish following, I'll actually turn around and try to bring it back to the point of the inside turn or the natural ambush spot where we pick the fish up. So I want them to be there. That's where they're there to feed. So, but again, try to time that right and hit those spots at the right time. Shallow fish, a lot of times if you hit shallow fish at the wrong time, they just won't budge. They'll just sit there. You can buzz a bait right by their nose and they won't move. So timing has always been very important with shallow fish. You can't midday, a lot of times they won't bite. Sometimes you can go and move them with a glider and stuff like that. A lot of times I don't even want to do that. If they're not going to bite, I don't want to move them. I don't want to bring them, back out off the flat or whatever, off the sand or the bald spot that they're on. I want them to be comfortable, and then I want to hit them at the right time. So here's a little clip. I'm not sure how well you guys are gonna be able to see this, but it's at least gonna give me a little bit of time to just kind of talk over this video. But this is a clip from a Musky Hunter episode that we filmed a couple years ago, and it was. I'll kind of set the table, and then I'll talk as it's playing. But basically, I had been out of town. I'd come back into town, and I'm talking to my good buddy Corey, who, you know, of course, I was happy for Corey, but it was sort of not what you want to hear, because he's telling me, oh yeah, it's been really good. It's been really good. Last week, caught a bunch of big fish. He caught, you know, a bunch of fish, I think up to 50, 51 inches. You know, he's catching, you know, kind of the larger fish in these metro lakes, like 46 to 51 or whatever. And, you know, so basically I'm going, okay, that's fantastic, but now those fish are out of play. So, and this is a shallower bite. It's kind of a break line and shallow bite. This is late summer, early fall. Temperatures are cooling. And I get out there with Jim and we start fishing, and the lake was as dead as a lake can be. It was calm. It was sunny. And I'm talking to Corey, and he's going, I don't know, man. I don't know what happened. I'm not seeing anything either. And I'm just like, I mean, this is stressful, because you've got 2.5 days to catch 4 or 5 fish to make a show. You really don't have anybody to blame other than yourself if stuff's not going right. You know, it's not a tournament. It's not like other, you know, it's you against the fish. So basically what happened was we were fishing one lake. It was slow. We had a little glimmer of hope here in one spot where we moved a bigger fish. Unfortunately, we didn't catch that fish. But basically, it took a massive storm. And this storm formed, literally, it was forming around us, and it didn't actually squeeze out any rain or lightning or anything until it got east of us. But it was a big, big weather event, and it was an eerie day. I almost think there might have been tornado sirens. I mean, it was a spooky day, and we got 2 fish to go in the matter of about 15-20 minutes. And so basically we fished all day, saw 1 fish, caught 2 right after that, and basically ended up getting off the water right after these 2 fish. So that night I go home and I'm thinking, what's the situation here? Okay, I'm thinking about all the fish that got taken out of the equation the week before. If my buddy Corey was catching them, I'm sure other people were catching them. For me, there's not a lot of bites happening on this lake. So I'm going to go to another lake the next morning, because we had the bottom dropped out basically. We had this big weather event, and you're going to see here in just a moment, the sky's a lot different the next morning. It is a crisp, clear, cool day. Of course, we edited the show. The show got edited backwards, so it looked like we started out. Here's the next morning. Now, we've got a strong northwest wind, post-frontal situations. I got a lot more clothes on. That was about my 4th cast of the morning. And I had one just blast. It was the tinsel, the Flashaboo Rabid Girl that Musky Mayhems had. I think it was a prototype at the time, and that was like one of the first casts I made with the bait. But that one got upwind of me, got off. I'm going, shoot, we still only have 2 fish in the can right now. And then we got back upwind, drifted back through the spot, and Jim gets one right away. You can tell it's getting a little bit lighter now, so this is probably 15, 20 minutes later. But basically, in my head, I'm just trying to decide, okay, how many bites are on this spot? How many times should we drift through the spot? Because I knew with these cooling temps that there's a very good possibility there'd be some fish sliding up shallow. And that's exactly what happened on this spot on a different lake. So we jumped lakes, and this lake is known, these fish move up shallow later on this lake than they did on the previous lake. So kind of took a little bit of a gamble, but there we got one right there. And now you can see here, I know my time's running out here, and I'm going, okay, shoot, we dumped that one. That was our bite. That would have been 4 fish. That would have been a TV show. You know, you never want to be the guy that just gets half a TV show done. You want to get the whole thing done. So we ended up sliding over to another like-minded spot, shallow sand flat, wind driven. We come in here and we get just a peanut of a muskie, but it's enough to cap the show off. But the whole time I'm just managing, I'm trying to decide, okay, where are the bites? Where are the fish? Where have new fish moved up on the spots? And that's the way my gears are going. So, we got any questions going, or are we good? All right. So, again, every day you hit the water. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a laminated game plan out there. It doesn't have to be like a Brad Childress menu on the sidelines or anything, but have an idea. Okay, you should have an idea what kind of spots you're going to hit, how deep, how shallow, you know, that type of thing, where you're going to start fishing, and just try to get a feel for if there's any fish holding on those spots and where you want to be. Build your day, get the timing down, know where you want to be at noon. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is how to treat a fall. So this is a really common, or real common asked question here in seminars, in the boat, that type of thing. And this kind of goes back to, you know, do you want to move, you know, do you want to move a fish prematurely? Do you want to go back to the fish? All that stuff. So if you get a fish that comes into the boat, okay, this is when I'm going to come back later, right? Okay, if the fish is far behind the bait, so that's kind of a no-brainer. If the fish is 15, 20 feet behind the bait, okay, we know the fish is there. Hopefully it goes back to the spot. Like I say, sometimes in June they're apt to just, you know, continuing off into the abyss. Okay, if the fish is coasting or fades off the bait, so sometimes they'll come in, you'll see them way out there in clear water, and they'll stop swimming, okay, and they just are coasting. They're just stiff. Or sometimes it'll look like the motor's still going, but they're just getting further and further behind the bait, and then they basically come in like way late. I'll leave that fish alone for a while. I'm not going to spin the boat around and come right back to it. If the fish comes in and hangs around the boat, I know a lot of the guests in my boat get real excited if the fish is kind of sitting there lazily. I actually don't want that to happen. The more the fish is, I feel like the fish wakes up, it's not focused on the bait anymore, and it's becoming aware of the boat. It's the trolling motor, the motor hanging off the back, all this stuff that's going on with the boat. I feel like it becomes aware of that whole situation, and it kind of snaps out of the trance that was in. If it doesn't make any turns, if it just comes in, it keeps going. You know, if you have moon or weather, something that you think is going to happen to get these fish a little bit more active, like in an hour, you know, a short amount of time, then I won't spin the boat back around and go right to the fish. I'll wait. Again, we talked about kind of guarding a spot or wherever you're hanging out in the area, but I'll try to get my timing right. Yeah, if you're close to dark, you know, and a lot of times with dark too, sometimes these fish in the metro, you know, a lot of times the metro lakes are so busy right around sunset that if you have the time, if you can wait like first dark, like an hour after the sun sets, that can be the time they go and hit it. A lot of times you'll go right when the sun's setting and everybody's trying to drive back to their dock or the landing or whatever. If you can just wait a little bit and not go and blow that fish again right at sunset, if you can wait another hour, I think you're going to have a lot better chance of getting those fish to bite. Alright, so here's some signs that'll make me stay. Or a lot of times what I'll do is I'll fish through a spot if I get a follow, and then I'll kind of slink off the spot with my trolling motor, and then I'll fire up the big motor and I'll go back around and hit that spot again. So if the fish is hot, if the tail's going, the tail is the motor on the fish, right? If that thing's moving, that fish is pursuing the bait with bad intentions, right? Okay, if it's closing the gap, sometimes you get that fish that looks like it felt like the fish came in so hot and it felt like it just ran out of room, right? It might have picked the bait up late and it closes in the gap. You go to turn and it maybe shoots off one direction. That's a fish I'm going to come back into this slide real quick. So we're talking about when to stay, taking the cues from the fish and what you're seeing when you're getting follows, when to stay or circle back around on the spot and hit the fish again. So if the fish turns off hard at the boat, and that's one too where a lot of the guests in the boat they'll go, oh shoot, you know, it left, it went that way. Well, if it turns and swims hard in one direction, number one, keep figure eighting, because a lot of times those fish will swim around the boat or they'll go one direction and they'll come back from another direction and end up eating the bait. But a lot of times if I see that fish turn and go hard back to where it came from, that's probably the best sign that I can see as far as wanting to turn my boat around and come through the exact same way that I just came, make the exact same cast. Because that means that fish is setting back up usually right where it was. So there's more than one fish on the spot. You know, if you're moving a couple, you know, you move a couple fish and say, you know, 10, 20 casts or something like that, I'll come back through there. A lot of times those fish will kind of get each other wound up. You know, the first one moves and then another one moves. I swear they can kind of feel the movement and the activity and stuff, and I think that just means that spot, it's, you know, it's kind of getting ready to boil over, and all of a sudden they might start getting bitey. So, if it's windy, you know, if there's wind hitting a spot, I just feel like there's more of a buffer zone between you and the boat and that type of thing. And a lot of times windy situations is when those fish are turning off hard and going back. Low light, you know, if I move one at dusk, I mean, I just talked about maybe you come back an hour after the sun goes down, but if it's low light in the morning, I'll turn right back around before that sun gets high, and try to hit that fish again really quick. And then of course if weather's coming in, I mean, I've said this a number of times now throughout the talk, you know, if you're looking to the west and the sky's dark, I mean, you're a lot of times your time is limited out there anyways. You're probably going to take a trip back to the boat landing pretty fast, but that weather, that barometer, you know, that's really ultimately what's going to get these fish to open their mouth more than anything. So, any other questions you want to go
Sure.
through? Or?
All right. Pat is asking, how educated does a fish get, and for how long do they stay educated?
It's a really good question. You know, I think we probably had this conversation, Ben, but like, I've had conversations with a lot of people, like, well, how does like a year class or you know, a group of fish that were stocked, say, in, you know, 05 to 2010, say they get conditioned to a certain, you know, family of baits or something like that. Well, then how do the fish, it seems like the fish after that then also know, like, not to eat that certain kind of bait or something. And it's really tough. I mean, I think we drive the pressure a lot of times with what we're throwing and that type of thing. I mean, there's certain fish, you know, I'll post a fish online or something like that, and I might get 4 messages from people, you know, if this fish has a lot of character to it, or, you know, a real discernible marking or something like that. I'll get 3 or 4 messages saying, hey, I caught that fish before, and I'll get pictures of this fish. You know, so some of them I feel like get caught a lot. Others, you know, I always say, like, the rarest thing you can catch in the Twin Cities is like a beautiful 45-incher that's got, like, no blemishes on it, that's, you know, perfect markings, you know, no scars, no nothing. But I think, kind of dancing around your question here, I think it varies from fish to fish. I think some, you know, hang out in the weeds more than others, some hang out in open water more than others, and I just think you know, some of them are hungrier than others, or maybe, you know, I don't know. I see a lot with sucker fishing, though. You'll definitely catch the same fish over and over again with suckers. So, and those fish clearly aren't learning. I think some of the big ones that are the big bruisers, they you know, have good builds, and, you know, they're probably spending a lot of time in open water. They're just coming up, you know, a few times a year in shallow water, and those fish are probably, when they're up on structure, they're easy to catch because they don't see as many baits. So.
All right, another great question. When possible, do you use the wind to drift, or do you run your trolling motor, and do you think it matters?
That's a really good question. Actually, the next slide here is going to be about bow control. So there's 2 times I really, you know, I'm hoping that I have enough wind to put. So I run a 620. So it's going to take a little bit, you know, it's a perfect boat to slip drift with, or to turn sideways and drift with the wind. You know, and I'm always trying to do a controlled drift. So even if I am turning my boat sideways, broadside or whatever, fanning the casts out, you know, I'm always adjusting with the trolling motor to keep, you know, a line in there so I can comb areas if I need to. So in June, there's so many times, anybody that's heard me talk or read articles, stuff, I'm always talking about the off the break bite in June. So I'll start out by, you know, fishing, casting right up to a weed line, but then so many times the fish are, like, right where your boat is if you're doing that. So if I have a wind to push me down a break line, I will turn the boat sideways and drift, and then we'll fan cast out. So whoever's on the inside can still kind of throw up to that weed edge. Middle guy's throwing, you know, kind of covering a swath just off that weed edge, that break line, and then the guy, you know, on the outermost side of the boat can really kind of bomb them out, you know, well, you know, cast or 2 length away from the edge. So and that's, of course, I'm trying to still mirror that edge, so that's a very controlled drift. It's a precision type of thing. Open water, you can kind of aim, you know, as long as you're combing, but you can kind of aimlessly drift. And then when I get up on top of stuff, when fish go shallow, you know, later in the year, I love to drift over these big flats and comb them. And you know, same thing, you can really spread the cast out, so everybody's kind of getting their you know, their own fresh water. But I love having enough wind to be able to do that.
All right, a couple more. If you're getting fish nipping at your bait in the 8, what is that typically an indication of? Obviously, we're not wanting them to eat in the straightaways. I'll go as fast as I can and bring it into the quarter outside, preferred since I'm right-handed, but the fish will actually speed up and nip at the straightaway. Could I be going too fast and actually ramping up the fish by going too fast? And I'll add to that. Just talk about how you determine pressure in fish that are following.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, hang it. That's something I'll see a lot of times out of some of my guests in the boat early in the year. A lot of times I'll see some of the best fishermen that I'll fish with will be really amped up, and they're like really stirring the pot, and they'll get these fish really jacked up, but they forget to feed them. They forget to let them have it, right? So you're gonna, you know, definitely hang it, let them get to it. But if they're nipping in the 8, you are doing like 99% of the stuff right. Okay, and sometimes that might just be the mood that they're in. You know, sometimes it can be kind of a posturing thing. I mean, I've seen them like bump baits with their mouth closed. I've seen them flare the gills. You know, and you're going, oh my, here we go. This thing's gonna eat. And sometimes I think they just do this stuff to see what the bait's gonna do next. So if you're clearly doing enough to get this fish jazzed up enough to, like, you know, be opening its mouth and making a play towards the bait, I would say probably hanging the bait or just letting them have it. And typically that's on that high outside. You know, it sounds like whoever this is got some skill and is thinking about it, doing, you know, basically getting right to where it needs to be. You just gotta let them have it, basically.
All right, I think we're good for a minute.
Okay, so let's get into the boat control slide here. So, boat control is huge in pressure cooker situations. Yeah, I'm a big boat control guy. I don't like aimlessly. I like to, even if I'm out in the abyss fishing open water or whatever, drifting on top of a flat, I want, you know, I'm still combing or, you know, trying to at least take note of where I'm at, and if I want to take that drift again or slide over and take another drift. But this slide is kind of dumb. This is one of these slides where I ask myself questions. But sometimes it's just like no-brainer stuff as far as boat control, because I think sometimes people will overthink it, or they'll think like, well, I need to be working my boat on the exact line that you know, everybody else is. Well, no, you don't. Where, you know, ask yourself, where are the fish? What's the best way to contact them? What's the best way that I can catch this? We always fish off port side of my boat. I think most guys do. But, you know, a lot of guys that are fishing on the front of their boat, they can fish either way, either direction. But whatever works best for you, think about what's the best way to get that bait to where I think the fish is. How will the fish be feeding? Think about the spot. Really imagine, you know, where the fish are, how they're going to be poised and ready in an ambush situation. How's everybody else fishing the spot? So that's something that you definitely got to ask yourself on these pressured waters and these pressured situations. Is, can I do something different? Can I still effectively get the bait to these fish? Can I go inside out? You know, if sometimes I'll just sit and watch, and I'll just watch, you know, boat after boat after boat go through a spot, and they're all doing it the same way. Now, you maybe don't want to be the guy that's like running over lines and when everybody's trolling, you know, in a certain situation or something like that. But if you can, you know, without messing everybody else up, if you can go and fish a spot differently and give a different look, a different angle, a lot of times that's going to pay big dividends. So, a big one, this is a question that gets asked a lot. So, do you turn the trolling motor off if fish comes in on a, you know, fish coming in on a follow? And a lot of times I'm trying to watch, if it's not super windy, I'm trying to watch a guy in the front of the boat or gal in front of the boat, and I will try to have my trolling motor on, and I'll hit the continuous button, and I'll try to have it on kind of as they're making their cast, and then midway through their retrieve, I'll get off the trolling motor. So it comes in, and they're doing their figure eight with the trolling motor off. Many times it's too windy to do that, so you keep the trolling motor on. And so my rule of thumb basically is if a fish comes in and the trolling motor is on, I'll leave the trolling motor on, because I've seen more fish dip in that situation where there's a hard stop of the trolling motor than actually turning the trolling motor on if it's off. So if it's on, I'll leave it on. If it's off, I'll leave it off. And then if it's a long follow situation, a lot of times you might be drifting into the weeds or something where you have to turn the trolling motor on or you have to turn it off because you're going 4 miles an hour or something. So you can use your head with that, but try to avoid that hard stop with the trolling motor if one's coming in hot. In shallow, I mean, if you're like when you really get dialed on a shallow bite, the little spots that they're going to hang on. Be stealthy. I mean, I'll see guys, they'll pull way up, onto the flat, and they'll set the boat down and they'll start casting like right away. I'll come off plane when still off the brake line. I'll putt up. I'll try to sneak up on them. Try to kill the big motor back a little ways. I got a power pull on my boat. That's become a real handy tool as well. If there's a point of interest or something like that, to keep the trolling motor off in those shallow situations and be able to kind of fan some casts out, that's been a big help. Long cast in open water, just try to get the bait out, cover more water. And then with live bait, be perfect. I mean, that's all I can say. Anybody that's fished with me knows I am just dialed in, looking at my electronics, working that trolling motor, trying to be. I mean, it's not boat control, it's bait control. So you want to have your bait, your bobbers, your downlines, whatever you're running them on. You want to have them right where you want them, right? Which is usually a weed edge, but be perfect with that. All right, there's no margin for error. Keep them right on the edge. All right, so talk a little bit about baits. I didn't get real in depth here when I was making the slide about, I'm sure when you talk about pressured waters, you want to hear about secret baits or little, this or that, little tweaks and stuff to baits. But basically, baits that are catching, I gotta read my own notes here. Baits that are in the fish catching category, but okay, so basically what I'm trying to say here with my first bullet point is sometimes don't overthink it. If there's a bucktail bite, don't be throwing gliders. If they're biting, rubber, don't get cute with, I don't know, name a goofy bait, right? Stay within the right bait category, but on pressured waters, a lot of times throwing something that's a little bit different is gonna pay off in the end. So I'm gonna slide over here, and we'll start with the bucktail family here. So bucktails are going to catch a ton of fish in my boat every year, and I think back in the day, and Cowgirl Junior was about the best thing going in my boat, and we still catch fish on regular blades, but nowadays it seems like something different, something with a little bit different grind, a little bit different sound is really going to pay off. And so for Musky Mayhem, I had the Ducks boys came out with me last year, and they had some triggers, and I was blown away by how much the fish were getting wound up over these baits. So it's a stagger. I think a lot of guys these days are throwing staggers, so you're aware of the mismatched blades. So this is a pretty big mismatch with the blades, right? Even so much that they have kind of made a little keel bend in the eye of this bait to get it to run and start a little bit better. And then they've also got this sleeve underneath the clevises. It's going to make a different grind or sound. But definitely a fish catching bait. Definitely one you're going to want to throw it in pressured situations. And then here's just a bigger version of that from Mayhem, the detonator. So big supermodel blade and then a 10. Same thing, real severe bend here. But these things are really going to thump and grind and kick off a different vibration. Another one, the Musky Frenzy, the IC9. So I got to throw this one a little bit last year. And definitely, I like this bait because it's a stagger. It's an Indiana. It's a like-size Indiana and Mag Colorado, but it feels like a regular bucktail for the most part. When you're bringing this thing through the water, it doesn't have a real wobbly knock or anything, but it's definitely got a little slip or a little different feel to it. And then the Musky Frenzy, that integrated one-piece clevis, is going to get those blades, or keep those blades spinning really good. So with bucktails, try mixing it up a little bit. Another one that's a really cool bait here is the Quad B or D, I can't remember, from Beaver Baits. And this is a really cool one, this Beaver Tail, and the way that Brian's got these tied is just awesome looking. If you go to his website and check out, he's got a video. We might have a link to it, I don't know, on ours here at Thorn Brothers, but really cool action on these things. So you're getting movement, you're not getting the regular just pulsation of the flash wheel, you're getting kind of a flapping and a swimming here behind these blades. So definitely another one to check out. And so just anytime there's a bucktail bite, when these fish are in situations you're throwing bucktails, if you're getting a lot of follows, you're getting a lot of lookers, try throwing something just a little bit different. I forgot to grab a bomb squad, but flaptails, as far as topwaters go, that's been a popular bait. Flaptails are kind of almost like went from like a cult classic type of bait to kind of a mainstream topwater now. And Jeff from Bomb Squad is making an awesome looking bait. I haven't thrown it yet, but again, saw the video. I like how this bait rides low in the water, and it's got a big, like a Mag 9 blade on it, and it flaps pretty good. It makes a lot of racket. So very cool bait. Here we go. I got one to show you. Here it is. So it's a big, heavy flaptail. It's going to ride real low in the water, and then this is going to come up and hit this metal disc and make a ton of racket. And just you can always be tinkering with these things too. You can add a split ring or something too and get that blade going a little bit wilder. So that's definitely something to check out. We got some of those here at Thorn Brothers. One that I'm kind of excited to try out this year. This is actually an A-rig that my buddy Chris Willen has been messing around with. So I just threw a swimming dog and a couple blades on here, but this is definitely something I'm excited to throw in open water this June around on these Twin Cities lakes. Swim baits have been a really good producer, but you do get a real high ratio of follows to bites, I feel like, on swimmies. So I think this is something that's going to get these things to open their mouth a little bit more. You're going to call fishing from a long ways away. In Minnesota, you can't have hooks here, but I'm looking forward to trying some maybe smaller swimmies right there too, some of the paddle tail. But there's just lots of different possibilities you can do with something like this. So that's one that is probably going to be available here as the season goes on. And then the Phantom Exorcist too. It's another bait that has really been a big producer on these pressured waters. I don't know whether to call it a deep glide bait or a pull pause bait, but it's one that you can kind of fish either way, and definitely been getting good on that. So we got a few of those left here at Thorn Brothers. Preparation. I hijacked these slides from another presentation, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but preparation. I mean, you go through. We all have expensive equipment, everything. Have your stuff ready. Have good stuff. Have good rods. Have Thorn Brothers 9-foot plus rods. Good reels. Good nets. Good equipment. I mean, there's so many people out there fishing. There's no reason to be messing around with stuff. Again, that kind of goes back into being a well-oiled machine when fish are biting. Don't want to be horsing around. Yeah. So, we have any more questions?
Just a couple more, and if you guys have questions, throw them out there now. We'll get them to Ryan here in the next couple minutes. We got a few minutes left. We'll hang on and see what comes in. First one, best underused bait in the Metro. A Metro option, if you're willing to share one that's people aren't using.
Well, my brain always goes to like which part of the year, which part of the season, but I would say smaller bucktails. are probably one. I mean, you know, like a rabbit squirrel, or you know, single-bladed bucktail, like a single-bladed rabbit squirrel, something like that. I mean, we used to catch so many fish before I started guiding, like out on white bear and bald eagle, on just like Mep's musky killers, little number 5 Indiana blades. You know, and this is typically when the fish are shallow. Okay, I'm not going to be out in open water or out, you know, in 18 feet of water. But when fish are up shallow, real small bucktails will definitely get these fish. You're not going to get a ton of follows. You'll get a lot of bites with those. So that's one to think about. Boy, I don't know. Otherwise, honestly, I would say this Phantom Exorcist was a very that was a bait that I slept on for a couple of years, and we started throwing them more last year, and they are getting bit in my boat for sure.
All right, Will Petty is wondering, do you have any castback theories you'd be willing to share?
Well, we kind of talked about like when I like to go back and that type of thing. I know, like when I first started musky fishing, it's like the tiger tubes, and you'd have like these little plastic bait. The theory was you're gonna flip them back and stuff like that. Like when I'm on Lake of the Woods, I've even got some guys that have tied me some cool flies. Jay Young tied me a really cool fly, and I throw it back. You have a fish that would follow for a while, and I'd throw it back on not on a fly rod, not that cool, but I'd throw it back. And I'd backlash, and then as I'm sinking, picking the backlash out, and the bait's 15 feet from the boat, the fly's sinking down. It's about 4 feet down by the time I get my line all figured out, and I'd twitch it back. I mean, those fish would be right on it, and they'd be posturing and opening their mouth and stuff. But I haven't found like a sure, bet, rock solid, like flip back bait or anything like that. I think really it's about assessing the timing on when you're going to come back and how aggressive that fish is. I mean, I feel like it's not super often where you like move a fish on, say, a bucktail, and then throw a less aggressive bait and get that fish to bite on these pressured waters. I think capitalizing on that fish when it's revved up and jacked up the most is when you get that thing to bite.
All right. Joe Billiar wondering, pressured water, is line or leader playing a factor?
Possibly. I use all stealth tackle leaders, and I use fluoro for quite a bit of stuff. I'll throw solid white around if we're throwing jerk baits or glide baits. But one thing I do, the water's so clear in most of these lakes now, they pretty much all have zebra mussels. And when I'm out of town too, it seems like I'm mostly fishing clear water, so I'll use actually pink leaders. I'm gonna have to get those in the shop here actually.
Yeah.
But that pink, the pink stuff is great. I don't know the science behind it, but if you just look at clear fluoro in the water, it looks bright white to my eye. And if you look at pink, it looks much more transparent. So, seems to be a little bit, less obvious to my eye. I don't know how the fish see it, but it makes me feel better about it. Otherwise, I think go with the leader that's going to work the bait the best. You're still getting these fish to react instinctually and bite these baits. I don't think they're really like getting close and eyeballing stuff and really sniffing them out. They're just kind of coming up and blasting the bait when they're jacked up.
All right, so Gary Dew is chiming in, and I'm just going to go ahead and answer this one. He's asking about Phantom lures, and Ryan went and grabbed that one off the floor. We have a brand new fresh batch of Exorcists and Phantoms in the store. They are delivering, so we will have Phantoms hopefully for all eternity.
I might be taking all the Exorcists.
All right, Jay Anthony, what is your favorite rod and presentation to increase hookups on Magdogs and Medusas?
With a bullet point, the Predator, the Thorn Brothers Predator X Heavy, and that's, so if you're talking monster Medusas, pounders, stuff like that, I'm gonna go up to the double X Heavy, and I can throw them on the X Heavy. But if I'm going to do it all day, I'm going to go to a double X. just a great balance of, it's a lightweight rod with a lot of backbone. It's basically, I just put something up on Musky Hunter website, had a little write up a couple weeks ago, and kind of outline why I just think it's the best all around musky rod out there that I've ever laid hands on. So definitely, I'd like to throw a lot of Magdogs and a lot of like husky and regular sized deuces around town here, and that's what I'm throwing on. Definitely.
All right, Roger Eklund is wondering, is there any time of year you prefer to throw jerkbaits like suics, bobbies, or do you throw more during cold fronts?
I throw a Mag bar fighter in June. I'm probably throwing a Mag bar fighter, and now an Exorcist. It's kind of a blend between Exorcist and Mag bar fighter. Out of the back of the boat, I'm probably doing like 75% of my casts with one of those two baits. So I used to throw a lot of suics, a lot of bobbies, eddies, I can't think of the other one. Not eddies. Wades, thank you. With the angle, yeah. But once I started throwing the bar fighters and could get them down deeper, get them to swing a little bit, which is what this bait does, the Exorcist, it gets down deeper and it swings. That's what I want that bait doing, and that seems to be what gets bit. And they're also great fish finders. So throw them in June, and then a lot of times we throw them in the fall as well. Anytime there's kind of a transition between bites, maybe the fish were shallow, now they're not really shallow, we'll go out to break lines and we'll throw slower moving, pull pause jerk baits. So.
For those that can't get bar fighters, Franken Suics in stock always. Yeah. Weight kit with them. Mm-hmm. Can be tuned to run exactly like those more expensive diving rise baits. All right. Nick Poplar is wondering, what adjustments have you made dealing with changing water clarity and pressure? We've all dealt with the zebra mussel clearness. What do you got?
Yeah, that's these lakes around here in the last 6 years or however many years, tremendous changes. Curly leaf pondweed, weed lines changing with water clarity, tons of stuff. So, one thing that, I feel like I've always done a lot of live bait fishing in clear water, and my confidence in clear water in the fall a lot of times lies with live bait. And then nowadays it's the only trips I end up getting booked for. It seems like our live bait trips. So I've really sharpened up my live bait game, I feel like, over the last several years. The shallow game, I feel like, we still catch them in the middle of the day. It's funny, I was looking at all my pictures the other day, kind of scrolling through them, and it's amazing how many pictures still are like bright, sunny backgrounds. But I think really just having a game plan, like when fish are shallow, having a game plan to time these fish and hit them when they're ready, which a lot of times is going to be in the morning or after dark. I don't know. Again, just the boat control stuff comes into play. These fish are, I feel like they're either feeding out in open water, or they're using these weed edges as ambush spots, and I think you got to be perfect when you're working these edges. So.
Thoughts on chatterbaits? Miles Ock is wondering, thoughts on chatterbaits for muskies like the Angry Dragon?
I just don't have the time in with them. I know, Innovations came out with them I forget what they were calling those, but that was a long time ago, and, through those a little bit. I've had some follows on those baits. I've got a couple Angry Dragons. They're good looking baits. I just haven't thrown them a whole lot and haven't really found a time where the fish are preferring something like that over a bucktail. So.
All right, last one for this moment. Sean McGrade is wondering, can you speak a little bit about knocking off the queen and your thoughts on how this relates to other fish on the spot or activity?
Sure, yeah. I made a post on my Instagram a week or two ago showing a fish that we had caught after. So it was a live bait situation. We had worked this fish. Actually had to pick up a sucker once, drop it. We played with this fish for like a total of an hour and a half, and finally we caught this 52-incher, and we're super excited, obviously, and life is good, and we kind of like got back in the water with some bait and like spun around and went right back through the same area. It was a windy day, so we kind of pinned to an area. And next time we went through, we caught a, I don't know, 45, 46 inch or something like that. And I've seen that happen a number of times where you take that big one. Sometimes the big one it's got the best piece of real estate on a spot. It's kind of, and if it's up, it's got its dander up, it's moving around, it's chasing stuff around. I think the other fish know that. And I've seen it too where, you'll hook a 3-footer or something like that, and it's fighting, and all of a sudden it just comes up to the surface, stiff as a board, and you're reeling it in, and it's just like following water. It's like, like a skipping a bass across the water. And also, I'm like, what's going on? And then you look, and there's like a 4-footer or a 50-incher swimming like ominously below, behind it. And I think these fish kind of know, like when big fish are moving around and the motor's going, I think they kind of freeze up and they respect their elders, so to speak. So I think if you catch that one, release it, that thing goes down, it feels shame on the bottom for a while. It's out of the equation. I think, then the kids can come out to play a little bit, and you might get some other fish showing their face on that spot.
All right, Alex Stevens wondering, what is your mindset when you get bright skies and calm conditions on clear pressured waters? Baits and types of spot. And this question came up a couple times with Ben Knutson too. So maybe just some general talk about high skies, clear, bright sunny days, no wind. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, so I mean, there's again, it's my brain is thinking of the different phases of the season. A lot of times, if we're break line fishing, and I'm probably sliding out a little bit deeper. I might be using like weighted bucktails and slow rolling a little bit. It's a great tactic to kind of like I never count the bucktail down, but I'll get the blades going and let it kind of go down belly out, and then gun it back to the boat. So like we've got the Thorn Brothers Heavy series of Musky Mayhem bucktails around here. It's a great bucktail to do that with. Everything's heavier wire, heavier blades. It's got a washer behind the clevises. Great bait to slow roll with. But that slow rolling, and then a lot of times you're still catching those fish at the boat. But you're getting that fish to you're getting its attention down a little bit deeper, and then gunning it straight up, and then going into a nice aggressive figure 8. That's been a really good tactic. Ripping rubber. I'm not a big fan of catching fish down real deep, but a lot of times I might, catch that rubber out, count it down 3, 4, 5 seconds sometimes before you start ripping it. So a lot of times those fish will push down a little bit, and you're just not reaching them if you're in that upper 5 feet of the water or something like that. So.
All right, we got to let you get back, but one last question. Jerry Zimmy's really curious. Who are your 2 favorite guys to go fishing with?
Well, that'd be Zimmy and Jamie, of course. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. I was just going to do real quick here. We just I'm going to do this thing with Josh, who's talking on Sunday, and it's through Musky Insider. So look at Musky Insider in the next couple days. We're going to be doing some paid seminars, but we're going to talk about the same stuff we're talking about today. You have to pay a little bit of money, but we're going to go over some stuff. I think I'm doing mine on April 4th, so stay tuned on the Musky Insider stuff. Thanks for tuning in, guys.